going on, everybody? Hopefully, we got this set up right and you can hear me okay. Um, was looking at some things before I hit the live button and realized it's been a while since we've done one of these, and looks like we got Matt Leach coming in. All right, I think. Hey, we got it right.
Hang on. Oh, no, 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 don't want to leave. No. Hey, look, check it out. I'm dressed just like.
I was gonna say I like this Midwestern vibe that you're going with here.
It's really hot in here, but I put the flannel shirt on anyway just to be like you because I want to look like a real celebrity. That's what I'm doing. I've got the hat on, Smucker's hat. I've got the beard. I've literally gone through the itching all day. Have this beard. I'm gonna hack it off the second this live stream ends. Telling you.
That is outstanding. And the last time I talked to you, you seemed pretty fascinated with the bear hunting stories,
Yeah,
and I completely forgot it. I meant to bring the claws off of the first bear that I killed to show you, but I completely forgot it. So we'll have to get that next time.
No, it's fine. You can skip that. I'm not bothered if I don't see severed bear claws in my life. Thanks very much.
Oh, how's it going?
It's going great. You know what? I just got off a meeting with Eric Dorr, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yes, he was saying quite a lot of bad stuff about you, man. I don't know if your relationship on the rocks or what's going on.
It doesn't surprise me.
No, we were, and you're in on this as well, JD. But we're planning a tour, like a long tour for next year for the 80th anniversary, and it's going to be a Band of Brothers tour, and it's going to go from Oldbourne to the Eagle's Nest. So it's going to be about 13 days. We were just on with a vendor that's going to help us and a guide that's going to help us, and it's going to be really, really cool. It's going to be really, really cool. So I'm really excited, and I hope you don't mind if I disrobe, but I can't wear this flannel shirt on this podcast because it's really hot. What role did Matthew play? I played Floyd Talbot. Now that I'm on, I'm not very good at reading the questions as we go along. But if anybody's got any band questions that they want to fire at me as we're going along, bear with him. Then just let me know and I'll answer them. I figured I'd lead with that at the beginning.
Yeah, sure. Yes,
rather than say at the end when I was coming off, because that would be rubbish.
Yeah, for anybody who's watching this, we have nothing planned right now. This is literally just off the cuff.
You say that. I saw your post because I read your post. I know you don't read mine, and I saw you said that we have nothing planned. So I have several pages of stuff planned.
Oh, outstanding!
Yeah, it's mostly about me, so you don't even need to talk. So I'm just going to read from my autobiography, Leach on Leach, Leach Sandwich. And I'm going to start at the beginning. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about what it is that we do over at WeHappyFew 506. But how did you find the tour? I mean, you came on one of our tours, JD. How was that? You came to Normandy?
Oh, yeah, loved it. So for people who are watching, right before the 79th anniversary, had a chance to go on tour with Matt, WeHappyFew 506 group in Normandy, linked up with Paul Woodage, who, my gosh, how good is he?
He's pretty good. Don't inflate his ego any further. He's pretty good.
But anyway, had a great time. Had a crew that became known as the YouTube Monkeys, who were just filming everything. Unfortunately, nobody's going to be seeing any of my footage. But I say nobody's going to be able to see it. There's one Greek burglar in Athens who's going to get to see it, but that's about it.
On that, JD, you don't want to buy some footage, do you?
Yeah.
I saw a question: are they going to correct what happened to Sergeant Talbot and Albert Blythe at the end? I don't think they are. There's quite a lot of anachronisms in the show, but we do know that Albert Blythe, in fact, survived the war, and his son reached out to me. Obviously, he was a bit miffed about it all. And the thing with Floyd Talbot was that I spoke to his brothers about this, is he didn't disappear off and become a woodsman and a drunk and that kind of stuff. He actually was, he was a good brother and a loved brother and all the rest of it. But for any of those questions that you guys have, where it's like this was wrong, and Foxhole Norman got 2 gold stars and all that kind of stuff. The writers are all aware of it. People like Graham Yost hate the fact that Foxhole Norman was portrayed the way he was, but when they wrote the show, it was all sort of the guys talking, and this guy remembered a bit of this that somebody, do you know what I mean? They had no sort of facts to go on. They had to sort of like get it from interviews and stuff, and certain people weren't very well liked, so perhaps their portrayal wasn't great and that kind of thing. So yeah, there are a lot of anachronisms in the show, and they've sort of been ironed out since on things like this podcast and cast meetings and that kind of stuff. But maybe on a reissue they might change.
So during filming, do they have historians on set who are doing like real-time fact checking, or is it just kind of it is what it is, and you do the best with what you got, and you realize that you're going to have to maybe bend the truth a little bit for the sake of the story? How does that work?
Well, a very good question. The writers and Dick Winters. So when the first couple of episodes were written, they would go to Dick Winters and say, "We're going to tell it this way," and he'd be like, "Well, that's not what happens." And they're like, "Yeah, but for the sake of dramatization, it'll work better like this." And he would say, "Okay." As far as real-time history is concerned, I know I don't look it, but I'm old as balls. And the show actually years ago when there was no real-time history, unless you call someone up with a type of thing. So yeah, it was kind of as written. What we did have on set was people like yourself, who were huge, history buffs, and they more things like what you were wearing, what how you walked, your uniform, all that kind of stuff. They had all these photographs and all this information that they collected, and they were absolutely fastidious. You might have where the Mozette strapping is here. There's a little pad that goes underneath, a little brownie pad. In some of the pictures, yours might be curled up like this because I don't know, it got bent during combat, or you just slept funny. So for the whole of that episode, they would bend that bit up. Do you know what I mean? It was that specific.
Wow.
And that was a lot of that was like costume guys and armorers and stuff. There was a guy called Joe who's in charge of the costume, who I believe has been passed, who was just fabulous at that. He was absolutely on it and trusted to be so as well. It's one of those things where I think if everybody could go back with what they know now, it would be a completely different show, an absolutely completely different show. But
well, I've talked to authors who have written like very well-known books that are very popular and like that, who've gone back and looked at their work and said, I wish to goodness I could go back and add this or change this, or if I had to do it over again, I would maybe approach this a little bit differently. There's one in particular, I won't say his name because I don't want to out him, told a story of it's a very compelling story of something that happened in the Normandy campaign.
Mhm.
And later on found out that his version of the story was way off. Now, he was doing the best with what he had at the time. And the story has been told over and over and over now. And he says that he has so many deep regrets about putting that to paper. So anyway, but you have to give grace to people.
Graham Yost, who wrote episode 7, I jokingly, I had him on a live Zoom, and I jokingly said to him, "Do you wish he'd come to boot camp?" Which he was like, "I have 2 regrets. One, not going to boot camp." So actually, he did. I don't know what he'd done at boot camp. I mean, he'd have died. And the other one was not naming Peacock and Dyke fictional character names. He wished he'd given them because of it's one of those things that like suddenly there's family, and we had Peacock's son, I believe, on as well.
Yeah.
It was family, and then the story comes out, and in fact, Norman Dyke is in fact a hero, and he's got these 2 gold stars, and actually he was a very, very competent combat leader who just had this breakdown and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's one of those things that you put it out there, the dramatization's out there, and then it rears up a bunch of stuff. I think overall what it's done is it is a beautiful thing, and people love it, and the veterans loved it. But there are some glaring anachronisms.
Yeah, but
That's the way it's going to be, you know.
Here's the good thing is, here we are 20 some odd years later, still talking about it.
I have
And
nothing else to talk about.
and people do what?
I have nothing else to talk about. You know,
But
Bridget Jones's Diary. There's that Bridget Jones's Diary. There's that one guy that's one of her friends that had a hit show in the 80s and has done a hit song in the 80s and has done nothing since because he's got laid off it ever since. That's me. That's
but I mean, you guys introduced something into the culture that has had staying power that's
right.
pretty rare. You know, you can, I can get out my old Band of Brothers DVDs that I had, you know, that I've had for 20 years now, and plug it in and watch it, and it doesn't feel dated at all.
No.
I mean, so you all created something that has really served as a gateway. I would say that in Saving Private Ryan for millions of people to get interest in World War II. And if there are some errors along the way or some things that maybe could have been told differently, well, that's fine. We can sort that out. The important thing is that, you know, people have got into it. You mentioned that the veterans liked it and everything. I know that, like, Bill Garnier and Babe Heffron, they were on set, weren't they?
Yeah, right,
Were there any other guys who were on set?
Some guys would come and go. There was a very moving episode, which is when we were shooting the end of episode 5, the Crossroads episode, where everyone gets just chucked into the Deuce and a Halves and shipped to Bastogne. And that was a night shoot, so we're filming, I don't know, whatever time in the morning it is, you're just going bonkers. There was a sort of like, there had been this rumor that Dick Winters was coming down on set for a while. And suddenly we're all in the back of this Deuce and a Half, just kind of like clowning around as you do and all that kind of stuff. And suddenly the canvas on the back of the Deuce and a Half got whipped up, and there was this little man stood there. I mean, they were all tiny, but there's a little, and I'm small. So, I mean, he must have come up to about here on me, because I remember, I mean, it's my shoulder I'm showing here. I remember putting my arm around him later on, and it was Dick Winters. And he was with Ivan Schwartz, who you may know, who was a big fella, was a producer, a big fella. So he was dwarfed by this huge, wonderful guy, Ivan Schwartz. And he looked up into the Deuce and a Half. He went sheet white. He said something to Ivan, and they left. And they left the set, and they left Hatfield, and they went straight back to the airport, and he went all the way home. And he said that it was like looking into the faces of ghosts.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of those moments where you start to feel the enormity of everything. I mean, there are a lot of guys, and I'm one of them. I'm much more comfortable with it now that I've got older and I'm more sensitive. But when I was younger, I found it all a bit overwhelming. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The impact, the cultural impact, and the importance that it's had on people, I've found difficult to sort of cope with. Do you know what I mean? I sort of distanced myself with it for a while because it just seemed all too much. Yeah. Well, you're quite right. Shane Taylor calls it the entry point. He calls Band of Brothers the entry point into World War II for a lot of people, which is a great thing.
Yeah, and like I said, it hasn't aged. You know, you watch a lot of films. Like if I watch a World War II movie that was made in the 70s, it feels like it was made in the 70s.
Especially when they're speaking German, but they're actually speaking English.
Yeah. But Band of Brothers is not that way. I mean, you can watch that and it looks like it was just made, you know, in the past year. So where did you grow up in England?
I grew up in the north of England, kind of. I'm an army brat, so I moved all over the place, but I went to a boarding school in the north of England, which is where I am back here now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I guess the next question is going to be to do with Americanisms and accents and all that kind of stuff, is it?
I was actually going to ask if, like, where the acting came in. Was that something that you picked up in school, or was that later on?
Yeah, that's a very good question, JD, actually. I've mentioned before, I'm a small man. I'm also quite a gobby man. And I went to an all-boys military private boarding school. And I think acting came as a cunning survival tool in that I was able to talk my way out of things, clown around and that kind of thing. And then more seriously, I just, it wasn't really a thing in an all-boys military school to put on plays that were any good or to be good in them. It was seen as a source of a weakness, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And it was the 1980s, so there were all sorts of other names thrown at people who were good actors. But I just took to it, and then the drama teacher was wonderful. His name was Colin Tones. He was just he finally got somebody who was interested in it as well, and I just kind of took to it and flourished. And then girls start liking you because you're in plays, and then it's utterly addictive. Then it's just absolutely. And then I moved down to London. That's where my parents actually moved to America. I moved down to London and I went to a drama school, and I was winging it. I was always winging it because there's no actors in my family or anything like that. I just winged it and then winged my way into like a kids show where I played a football star that broke his leg. And then from there, with a couple of other deviations, suddenly I was on Band of Brothers. And I remember the first day of filming just showing up. And I was in this rinky-dink Nickelodeon. This is Nick UK, not Nick USA. This is the rinky-dinkiest little company. And it was all sort of single camera stuff. And I show up. I love you in the Amstel commercial, Matt. Oh, shut up, Marcel. It's good though. And I show up on the first day of set, and there must have been 300 people behind the camera, let alone, I mean, just technical advisors, makeup, costume, just everywhere. And I remember thinking that line from The Usual Suspects where he's like, "You sure you brought enough guys?" I was like, how many people are here? And it was then I thought, oh wow, this is going to be huge, which is weird. Sorry if I'm talking too much, but it's weird because it doesn't matter the size of a production. It doesn't matter how huge something is, how much money's in it, who's involved. The process of acting is exactly the same. So in the end, you're just two guys talking to one another.
Yeah.
So that didn't change at all. So that kind of weirded me out. I was like, do I act bigger? No, it's a huge set. Do I have to do the set? Or it's like, no, please don't do that. We don't need any theatricalness from you. Thank you very much.
I would imagine that there's some pressure that comes along with that, walking on set and seeing that many people, because I mean, like with me, if I mess up, it's just me. I'm just one monkey with a camera, and I can redo it. Whereas if I'm on a set and there's 300 people behind the camera, if I mess up, holy cow, that there's a whole lot that has to, I have just inconvenienced a lot of people. So I would imagine that the pressure is a little bit more intense there.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I've always found the bigger the thing, the more I relax, because I just think,
okay,
I don't belong here anyway, for goodness sake. So I'm just going to relax. But I'll tell you a funny story. So the kids show that I was in on Nickelodeon, this rinky-dink little kids show, was called Renford Rejects, okay? And it was about a terrible set of football players who I manage. And that was it. Now, on the director of episode 1 is a guy called Phil Allen Robinson, who wrote, directed Field of Dreams. So he's married to an English woman. And on the first day of filming, we're all in this huge aircraft hangar. There's just hundreds of people in there. Everybody's in there, but all the cast are in there. So you've got your David Schwimmers, you've got your Michael Cudlitch, you've got your Rick Gomez, you've got all these guys that I'm like kind of in awe of, and everybody's waiting, and suddenly the hangar door opens, and in walks Phil Allen Robinson, and he's got his son with him, and his son's about 9 years old and English, and he walks in, looks around, and goes, "That's the guy from Renford Rejects." And to a man, everybody just turned around like, "Sorry, who are you?" And which was great. That did relax me. Except Phil Allen Robinson just brought in a football for the rest of the episode, just got me to bounce the ball on my head like a seal to entertain his son. So that was that. And Actually, that whole episode was recut. There was actually a totally different episode 1, completely different.
What's the difference?
Actually, for Phil Robinson's initial episode 1, which was totally reshot and David Nutter directed it, his first episode was more documentary-like. It was actually really cool, but it was much more sort of grainy and low-key and sort of, I don't know, like a Vietnam doc or something.
Okay.
But the problem that it had was it didn't establish any of the characters. So you got to the end of it and you were still thinking, sorry, who are all these guys? Because you've got to establish at least 30 guys in the first episode.
Yeah.
So that got recut and redone whilst we were doing episode 10.
Okay.
It's an interesting factoid for your
is that original version still floating around out there somewhere? Has it ever been seen?
It's a good question, actually, JD. I, in fact, stole a copy of it from the editor.
Did you?
I also have a copy of episode 3 and episode 10 without any of the CGI in it. So when they're sat in the eagle's nest, it's just a blue screen. When Donnie Wahlberg gets shot before I pick him up and carry him off, you can see the wire on the back of the rocket and all that kind of stuff. So hey JD, hey Matthew, hey Greg. I consider that my retirement policy when I sell it to Eric Dorr.
Oh man, that is awesome. So were there any of the guys? I mean, it's kind of natural anytime you get a bunch of guys together. You know, there's going to be some that you connect with more than others, or end up hanging out with. Was there anybody on set that you just kind of clicked with? Not to exclude anybody else, but you know.
Swimming in dangerous waters here, JD. Okay, so yes is the answer to that. So latterly, I've really connected with like James Madio, who plays Bacante, because he and I used to tour together. Episode 7, by the way, is the answer to that question. My favorite episode.
Okay.
On set at the time, the guy that plays Blythe, Mark Watt, I was a huge fan of his because he's in a lot of English films. I was a huge fan of his for the longest time before Band of Brothers. I couldn't believe I got to act with him and everything. I was like, this is one of my favorite actors. And he has these big blue eyes and comes across as super intense actor. And he is by far and away actually the stupidest human being I've ever met. In that he's just an idiot. He's just a clowning idiot. He hit it off straight away, and then he's like, "Oh mate, you know, we've got a couple of nights off. You want to come out? You want to come out for a few beers? Let's go out into town." And it's only after that people said to me, "You didn't go out with Mark Warren, did you? Because you'll never come back." And he's not changed, by the way. He still lives the same lifestyle, but he's what did Rick Warden call him? The king of excess. He's the king of excess. I went out with Mark Warren. We hung out for the month that he was on set, and I never want to see him again. I never want to see him again. But as a group, we've all stayed friends.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing something with the We Happy Few 506 stuff, and I want to get any of them on like something like this or a Zoom where we're doing Zoom reunions and that kind of stuff, to a man, not one of them turned me down. And it's like Michael Cudlitz, who's a freaking superstar now. I mean, he's huge. You know, I sort of furtively emailed him, having nicked his email from some other chain. And within seconds, he just clicked back and we went, yes. The answer's yes. I'm going to be doing something that day. Turns out he was on set on Warner Brothers or something. But I'll do it. Anything, you know, Ross McCall, Jimmy Madio, Rick Gomez, Scott Grimes, all those guys have all said yes and all come on. And it's been so cool because sometimes they literally, I mean, Scott Grimes is on the set of American Dad. And he was, you know, chat to me like this. What's interesting is that if I were to ask them anything else, like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. Do you want to talk about The Walking Dead for Michael? He wouldn't even answer me. He wouldn't write me back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So you mentioned the We Happy Few 506. You started that. It was around the 20th anniversary when you guys started doing those reunion shows, right?
Yes.
What was the genesis of that?
Thanks for the plug, JD. That was a good segue. Uh, basically, I do We Happy Few 506 with a really cool guy by the name of Leighton Hughes.
Yes.
Leighton I met in Bastogne, and he'd come because I was there with Shane Taylor, and we were there with Reg Jans, the tour guide and the historian, and he'd come in and he wanted to get some stuff signed.
Leighton did?
Leighton did, so I signed
Okay.
it, and then we got chatting, and actually he was a Renfrew Rejects fan. And then we sort of like kept in contact a bit. And then he said, "Oh, I do this thing called Currahee Signings, where I get guys from the Band of Brothers cast to sign stuff, and people pay you to sign stuff." And I was like, "Okay, that's it. They don't want to like talk or chat, or it doesn't seem like." So we started to spiral this idea of doing stuff on Zoom, and then COVID hit. So everybody's locked down, and everybody's sort of looking for stuff to do and be online and that stuff. And between us, we came up with this idea of doing cast reunions. So we started with episode 6, and we got Lucy Jean, who plays the nurse, and we got Shane Taylor, who plays Doc Rowe, to come on. And I just asked them questions, and we had the director on as well. So it was really, really, I was nervous as hell because it's live.
Yeah.
I didn't think that through at all. I was shaking like a leaf afterwards. So we did that, and people, because it was, people bought tickets to it. And then there was a huge sort of like, whoa, that was amazing. So we just went through the episodes. We went from 1 to 10. And we did the same thing. We got cast members on, or directors, or producers, or writers. And then, we did episode 9. We got Ross and Jimmy on, and the writer as well. And it's, it just sort of spiraled from there. But then, of course, there's only 10 episodes.
Yeah.
The business model, folks, I wouldn't recommend it. So then we started, we actually did the Pacific then. We did similar stuff with the Pacific. Mm-hmm. That didn't work as well because they didn't understand, the Pacific guys, that we don't want all of them on at once. We're going to do one episode and get 3 of you on and chat with the writer. But they would all jump on because they all wanted to chat to one another and catch up, which is a bit chaotic. Cool as they all were, and great as it was to have some of those. I mean, some of those guys I've got huge crushes on, and they all showed up, which was amazing. And then from then we started doing these tours, the We Happy Few 506 tours. We started in Eindhoven and did the Crossroads stuff, the episodes that I'm in, and then we've gone to Bastogne a couple of times and done that, and taken Lucy and Shane to Bastogne. We did Normandy. That's where I met you. That's why I got the booking, because I look like a celebrity. We're gonna do an Austria one. We're gonna do Berchtesgaden in Austria, and we're gonna do Arnhem, but for the British point of view as well later on this year. And then from there, we're gonna spiral out and do this stuff with Eric Dorr next year, where we're gonna do the 13-day episode tour, which we were just putting in place before this live show interrupted me.
And you mentioned Leighton. I have to say, I got to spend some time with him on the tour. Oh my gosh, is there a nicer guy than Leighton? He's such a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
So I mean, what you mentioned the Austria and Germany trip. What's the plan there? Like, what are you kind of hoping for out of that trip?
Well, it's still in the planning stage.
Okay.
The Eindhoven tour, so they'll be in October, of this coming October. The Eindhoven tour we pretty much got figured out.
Okay.
And it'll be sort of British First Airborne now, because my father's a paratrooper, British paratrooper, and so Arnhem's a big sort of wound growing up. The paintings in Sandhurst, the church I used to go to, and all that kind of stuff was like a lot of Arnhem. So I want to do the whole day rather than just a photo shoot.
Right.
And next day we'll be doing more sort of American stuff and sort of band stuff. And then Austria is it's in the hands of Eric as to what we can get sorted. We have the guide now that we want. And what we want to do Berchtesgaden, obviously go up top to the Salzburg of that business. But I think we want to do the town of Berchtesgaden as well, which I don't think anybody really does. And Eric's got all the really cool things that he wants to do down in the town. Other than Egg Goering's house, I'm sure he's got lots of other things that he wants to do.
So I know the tour guy that he's talking about.
Yeah.
He is the Paul Woodage of Burgess Godden. I mean, he's incredible. He knows it inside and out. Yeah, it's so anybody who jumps on that one is in for a treat. It's going to be good stuff.
Yeah, and when you've got somebody of that caliber, like Paul Woodidge, I just tell them to go do their thing.
Yeah.
Just whatever you think is cool, whatever story you want to tell. I mean, I just gave him free reign in Normandy those 2 days. I just said, just do what's cool. And he wanted to keep it flexible. And he was like, do I have to do band? Because I'll do some band, but I want to do some myth busting about band. I was like, just go for it. Just go for it. And I'll say the same thing to this guy in Burgess Garden. I noticed Chris Murray just calls the Battle of the Beards, which is his is grayer, mine's kind of redder, so I look more like a leprechaun, and you look like an aging leprechaun. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I've got a couple of questions for you.
Oh, okay, sure.
You're a history teacher, yeah?
Yes.
What year was the Battle of Hastings?
1066.
Correct.
I'm a direct descendant of William the Conqueror, so.
What? You tell me this now? I would never have come on this if you'd have told me this. We've got some unfinished business, you and I. I'm Anglo-Saxon to the core. What year was the Battle of Bosworth Field?
Battle of Bosworth Field. Chris Mowry, I know you're watching. Come help me out here.
I've only got one other question, by the way.
Yeah, you got me stumped on that one.
Let's have a look. Chris Mowry, who knows when the Battle of Bosworth Field was? Because I'm going to say it, but I actually didn't fact check it, so I could be wrong. 1215.
1215? Is that it?
Right? Yeah, it could be, because I put 1492, but now I think wrong.
1485.
Well, nobody knows. You're right. Nobody knows. And the last question for your bonus, 1485, he's saying. I thought it was 1492. No, the field was 1485. Oh, there's a big no as well. There's a big no. Right. What year did Norris McCafferty first scale Ben Nevis? I totally made that question up.
And
I was going to do the accent as
what universe you're in on that.
Norris McCafferty. Let's go up the. Yeah, I don't have any more questions for you. 1492 is my go-to. Yeah, was that Paul W? Ooh, Ben Nevis is beautiful, tallest in Britain. All right, Chris, you're just showing off now, mate. So I won't keep you for too much longer because you've probably got something better to do than talk to this numpty. But what else, buddy?
I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here and
chat
for a little bit.
Yeah, that's been really, really cool. What else is new before I go? Let me think. No, I was just going to rag on your beard, but then I've got a silly beard as well, so there's nothing I can do there. But if you don't mind, I'll just do a slight plug for what we do. Anybody enjoyed this, might enjoy our podcast. It's called the We Happy Few 506 podcast. You might see Nearly Men underneath as well. It's the same podcast. We just subtitle it that. You can go over to our website at www.wehappyfew506.com and check us out. Podcast, fantastic. Thank you very much. And see what we do. There's tours, there's all sorts of stuff on there. But yeah, consider giving us a follow and a like and a subscription and all that business. Because I mean, I'm friends with JD, so I can't be that bad, eh?
Yeah, and yeah, your podcast is one that I highly recommend. It's on my follow list or whatever you would call it on Spotify. Is it just Spotify or is it anywhere else where people can find it?
Well, it's on Patreon, Spotify. I think it's on Amazon. If you just type "We Happy Few 506 podcast," it comes up on a bunch of platforms. So there's just one question I'm going to answer before I leave, and that was, how do British actors lose their accent for American parts? Amazing. Well, we do watch a lot of American TV, so most people can do an American accent. But I do have a party trick that I'll do before I go, and that is, there is a reason why English people can do American accents and American people can't do English accents. No matter how hard they try, they always sound a bit like that, governor. Work at the Patreon. Yes, if you want to follow us on Patreon and be a subscriber and a Patreon, that would be great. So basically, the American accent, and I'm a proper nerd on this, so I know, it's not got any English in it at all. it's a cross between Irish and Dutch. So you have these two accents, and one of them sort of sounds like that. Do you know what I mean? Like top of the morning to your state accent here. Because the other one sounds a little bit like a porn star over here. So you have that sort of accent there. And so what you do is you take the Irish accent like that, and you take the Dutch accent like this, and you get them together, and that's how you get an American accent.
Brilliant. I won't try and do a British accent because I would just embarrass myself.
Please, you don't have to do it here, but the next time we speak, do the English accent.
You'll have to teach me how to get. Of course, even amongst the British, there are so many different variations.
Yeah.
When I was in Ukraine, I worked with a guy who was from Birmingham. I could barely understand the man.
I feel I can't understand people from Birmingham or Liverpool, weirdly enough.
Oh, okay. All right, man. Well, hey, I won't keep you, but hey, thanks for jumping on, and yeah, it was good catching up and chatting with you a bit.
It was great. Thanks, buddy. I don't know what I do to get out of here. Do I just press that cross?
Hang on a second. Yeah, do that.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers, JD.
Right. See you, everybody.
Bye.